So you and I have a little bit of a debate going. We haven't actually fought it out, but over what the minimum wage should be. The general consensus, at least for the presidential candidates, I can't believe this was even controversial, is to raise the minimum wage $15 an hour. The fight for 15, that fight has been going on for almost a decade now. And of course, these are not easy fights. So in my mind, I was always like, why are you shooting for 15 when by the time it's passed, it's going to be inconsequential, frankly, especially in this economy. So I live in New York City. You live in California. The cost of living is still very high in New York, even with COVID. General products, because of a lot of different issues, the rent is high. When you buy a cup of coffee, it can be $5, and it's not because the coffee's better. It's not even because of the minimum wage. It's usually because the rent on the coffee shop is so high that they have to increase the rates. That's the New York situation. So when I ran for public advocate, we had to create our own little ballot lines. It was called the Pay People More line. And it was because our whole was lower rents and higher wages. Wages, for New York, if it had stayed with inflation, would be $33 an hour. And that doesn't even factor in the cost of living. That's just if wages had actually, improved over the years. And so we advocated for $30 minimum wage. Big fights over this, big fights. We said for businesses that have over 75 employees, understanding the other costs that are still very high for a lot of small businesses. But you're proposing $25 an hour, am I correct?
Yes, that's right.
So what's your theory behind it? How'd you pick 25?
Well, I'd be glad to join you at 30.
Let's do it. Should we start something right now?
Yeah, I'm for it. Here's why I picked 25, but I think that there's as strong, if not a stronger case for 30. There's two elements of why I picked 25. First of all, it's aligned with historic trends. If the minimum wage had grown at the rate of productivity, not at the rate of inflation, but at productivity, which really measures the economic pie. If it had grown at the rate of productivity since 1960, it would be about $22.50 today. So that's one of the reasons I picked it. The second reason I picked it is that we have to learn from the history of these big fights that they take a long time. And so we have to anticipate what's going to be sensible by the time we achieve victory. And we owe so much gratitude to all the people who poured their heart and souls into the fight for 15. In addition, the uncomfortable math is that fight started in 2012. Well, as a result of inflation and productivity growth, $15 in 2012 is about equal to $18 today.
Yeah.
And every year that passes, there's going to be a further erosion of what that means. So, I think you're very savvy to go for 30 because obviously and unfortunately, we're not going to get either 25 or 30 this year. By the time we get it, inflation will have eaten into its purchasing power.
That's right. That's right. So, strategically, how would we carry about this fight? We're brainstorming a little bit here, but if we wanted to take this, nationally, it did take many, many years and getting key unions on board in states that unions can actually influence the outcome. So do you see is there potentially a faster strategy than passing a piece of legislation with a tremendous amount of pressure and taking to the streets in Democratic states?
Yeah. Well, first, I think as we both agree, we can't have progressive change if we don't elect Joe Biden in November.
Right.
So it has to begin with that. Our chance to even fight requires that we elect Joe Biden. Yeah. After we elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, I think that one of the first things they're going to put before Congress is a $15 minimum wage. And what we need is them to negotiate with us instead of the extreme right. We need them to negotiate with millions of people that you and I together can sign up in a call for a $25 or a $30 minimum wage. And if we can build that kind of movement, and I think we can, because a minimum wage speaks so tangibly to people's everyday experiences, if we can build that and show up at the Capitol and say, no, you're not negotiating with Kevin McCarthy, you're negotiating with us, and our demand is a $30 minimum wage.
Right.
Maybe we'll have a compromise at 18. And I think this is something that you understand, but too many people on the left don't. We can't negotiate from a place of compromise.
That's right.
The conservative movement has done this effectively for decades. They negotiate from a place of strength. They don't propose tax cuts. They say, eliminate the income tax. Similarly, of course, we would both be thrilled if the minimum wage were $21. The way to get it to $21 is to build movement and demand it's 30 and compromise from there.
I love this. I think we should start. I would love to pick up this conversation offline and brainstorming and writing down notes because, I mean, it was. When we were brainstorming our campaign, I mean, it was a very brief campaign, a special election. I just, wrote through a bunch of key things that I think could make New York more livable. I mean, that was ultimately the problem is regular people cannot survive in New York anymore as they can't in major cities across this country, whether it's Los Angeles or San Francisco, of course, Chicago, Miami. I mean, it's becoming inhabitable. And when I was going out into the community and talking to folks, unions especially, I was talking to union members, I can't tell you how many people said they no longer lived in New York. They weren't living in the outer boroughs. They weren't living in the suburbs. They were living in Pennsylvania, driving into work 2.5 hours. These are native New Yorkers because the wages in unions, the wages had not been sustainable for these environments, meaning cities. And of course, the cost of living has increased. So I think it's far overdue. And, one thing that Maria Svart said, who is the national director of DSA, she said, we can't wait for anybody to save us. So yes, while we have to elect our leaders, we can't wait for them to set the negotiation tactics. We have to do it. We have to do it. I mean, this is really, I think, what is so dire in this moment is clearly Joe Biden is not showing up and saying all the things that we want him to say. And we shouldn't be frustrated when he's not doing so, even though we're shouting. We just have to do it. We have to put pressure on whoever it is to make sure that they show up. Joe, before you go, can you just describe Aspiration Bank to everybody?
Sure. Aspiration, which you can find at aspiration.com, is the place where you can match your values and your money. On the surface, Aspiration is delivering bank accounts, FDIC insured bank accounts with the features you need, right? You have to have a bank account. But what's really special is that Aspiration is delivering these impact features that allow you to automate and make a lot more convenient you're doing good in the world by attaching it to things you have to do anyways. So by way of really quick example, obviously you have to have a banking account. You have to have a debit card to buy things. Well, with Aspiration, there's a feature called Plant Your Change, where you can automatically donate the spare change of every purchase you make to planting a tree. And there's also a feature where you can enroll and Aspiration monitors the gasoline you buy on your Aspiration card, and then automatically goes and buys carbon credits to make your gasoline carbon neutral. Well, obviously, none of these are singular solutions to the climate crisis, but it doesn't mean they also aren't really worthwhile. And it makes it easy for people to engage in those things, again, by attaching it to a financial product you have to have anyways.
Thanks for watching and listening to The Nomi Key Show. But remember to click like and subscribe on YouTube and please share on social media. If you're not already a patron, please join us for as low as $5 a month on patreon.com/The Nomi Key Show for early and special content. That investment makes a huge difference. We are not corporate media raking in the dough. It's really you guys that are keeping us going. So please consider being a patron. And to our current patrons, thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful to you. We also now have swag. So check us out on thenomikishow.com to get your mugs, your totes, and your stickers.